Emily Parker, desperate and alone, had nothing to give the world but her heart. She gave everything to a stranger on a crowded city street, expecting nothing in return. But the man she helped didn't just take. It returned more than she ever imagined. Who was he really? Why did he risk everything for someone he barely knew? And what secret did he hide that could change Emily's life forever? Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment where you are watching from. It gives me the strength and encouragement to keep writing beautiful stories. Emily Parker huddled in the corner of the busy city street, her hands wrapped around a thin coat that did little against the biting cold. The crowd rushed past, boots tapping on the wet pavement, umbrellas swinging, oblivious to her existence. She had given everything, her dignity, her pride, her heart, to survive. Yet despite the harshness of the streets, there was a spark inside her that refused to die. Hope. Hope that one day someone would see her not as a beggar, but as a person worth kindness. Her stomach growled, reminding her of the day's missed meals. Emily had no money, no family nearby, no one to call her own. She had faked being homeless for weeks now, a desperate experiment to find the one person who could see through appearances, the one person whose heart could shine brighter than wealth or power. It was a risky plan, but her father's warnings echoed in her mind. Trust must be earned, and kindness is rare. Among the blurred faces, one man caught her attention. He didn't look wealthy. His clothes were simple, his shoes scuffed. But there was something different in the way he moved. His eyes lingered just a moment longer than the others, scanning the street with a quiet awareness. Emily held her breath as he approached. He stopped a few feet away, noticing her shivering, unnoticed by everyone else. He didn't avert his gaze or mutter under his breath like the others. Instead, he bent slightly, offering her a small paper bag. "Here. You need this more than I do," he said softly, his voice calm yet firm. Emily's chest tightened. Her hand hovered over the bag, unsure if this was real or just another illusion. She had given everything she had to the streets, to strangers, to see if someone's heart could truly be selfless. And now, here it was. A man who didn't hesitate. A man who saw her when no one else did. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the city hum. She wanted to hide her surprise, her vulnerability, but something in his gaze encouraged honesty. There was a warmth in his eyes, a quiet patience that made her pulse quicken. "I'm Daniel Reed," he said, extending a hand not to assert dominance, but to simply connect. "Are you all right? Can I help you get somewhere warm?" Emily's mind raced. She had given everything, and now she had to decide. Trust him, or retreat into the shadows that had become her home. Her plan had been simple. Test hearts, not take chances. But Daniel's genuine concern, the way he had approached her without judgment, stirred something deep inside, a feeling she hadn't felt in years. I'm okay," she said cautiously, keeping her voice steady. "Just cold, that's all." He nodded, accepting her words without pushing further, but his eyes lingered. There was a quiet strength about him, a silent promise of safety. Emily realized then that she had been waiting for someone like Daniel, someone whose kindness wasn't performative, whose heart wasn't weighed down by greed or selfishness. As the evening descended, the city lights flickered against the rain-soaked streets. Emily watched him leave briefly, the paper bag clutched to her chest, wondering if she had imagined the entire encounter. But the echo of his kindness lingered, igniting a flicker of hope that refused to fade. In that moment, she knew her experiment had found its first success. She had given everything to a stranger, and already, without expectation, he had given her more. Yet questions gnawed at the edges of her heart. Who was Daniel really? Why did he stop when everyone else passed by? And what secret lay behind his calm, an unassuming presence that might change everything she thought she knew about kindness, trust, and love? Emily Parker tucked the paper bag close, her eyes following him, disappearing into the crowd. The streets were still harsh, the night still cold, but for the first time, she felt a warmth that wasn't from food or shelter. It was from possibility, from the realization that even in a world so indifferent, a single act of kindness could ripple into something life-changing. And deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. Emily barely slept that night. The small paper bag Daniel had given her sat beside her, empty now, but she couldn't bring herself to throw it away. It wasn't just food. It was proof. Proof that someone, somewhere, still saw her. Morning came slowly, wrapped in a pale gray sky. The city woke up in its usual rhythm. Cars honking, people rushing, conversations blending into noise. Emily returned to her usual spot, pulling her coat tighter, slipping back into the role she had chosen. But something had changed. Now she wasn't just observing anymore. She was waiting for him. Hours passed. Faces came and went. Some dropped coins without looking at her. Others ignored her completely. A few whispered things that stung more than the cold air, but Emily barely reacted. Her eyes scanned the crowd again and again, searching for one face. Daniel. By late afternoon, doubt began to creep in. Maybe yesterday had been a coincidence. Maybe he had just been passing through. Maybe she had read too much into a simple act of kindness. Her fingers tightened slightly. This was exactly why she had built emotional distance into her plan, to avoid hope. Hope made everything fragile. Just as she was about to look away, she saw him, walking toward her. Same steady pace, same quiet presence, same simple clothes. Her heart skipped. He stopped in front of her again, just like before. "I was hoping you'd still be here," Daniel said, a small, genuine smile forming on his face. Emily blinked, caught off guard. "You came back," she said softly, unable to hide the surprise in her voice. "Of course," he replied. "I told you I would check on you." That simple sentence did something unexpected to her. People made promises all the time, but rarely kept them. Daniel sat down beside her, ignoring the curious glances from passers-by. "I brought you something again," he said, on handing her a cup of hot coffee and a sandwich. Emily hesitated for a moment, then accepted it. "Thank you," she said, her voice quieter this time, not just polite but sincere. They sat in silence for a few seconds, the kind that didn't feel uncomfortable. "What's your name?" he asked gently. Emily paused. She couldn't tell him the truth. "Lily," she said. The name came out naturally, but something about saying it this time felt heavier. "Lily," Daniel repeated, nodding. "Nice to meet you." There was no suspicion in his tone, no doubt, just acceptance. "Why do you keep helping me?" she asked, turning slightly to look at him. Daniel leaned back a little, thinking. "I don't know," he admitted. "It just feels right." Emily studied his face. No hesitation, no hidden agenda, just honesty. "That's not a reason most people use," she said. "Maybe that's the problem," he replied quietly. His words lingered. For the first time, Emily felt like she wasn't just watching someone. She was understanding them. "Were you always like this?" she asked. Daniel gave a small, almost distant smile. "No," he said. "Life has a way of changing you." There was a pause. Emily waited, sensing there was more. "I used to have everything figured out," he continued. "Good job, stable life, long plans. Then one bad year took it all away." Emily's attention sharpened. "What happened?" Daniel exhaled slowly. "Wrong people, wrong trust. I lost my job, my savings, even my place to live for a while." Emily's chest tightened. "So you were?" "Yeah," he nodded. "Not exactly like this, but close enough. Invisible." The word hit her deeply, then invisible. She knew that feeling too well. "That's why you stopped," she said quietly. Daniel looked at her. "Yeah," he admitted, "because I remember what it felt like when no one did." Silence fell again, but this time it was heavier, more meaningful. Emily looked down at the coffee in her hands. This wasn't part of her plan. She was supposed to observe, not feel. But something about Daniel made it impossible to stay detached. Over the next few days, a routine formed. Daniel would come by after work, sometimes with food, sometimes just to sit and talk. He never asked too many questions. He never made her feel like she owed him anything. And slowly, Emily began to open up. Not about who she really was, but about emotions she had buried for years. "I used to think money solved everything," she said one evening. Daniel raised an eyebrow slightly. "Used to?" "Yeah," she replied softly. "Now I think it just hides things." He nodded, understanding more than she expected. "Money doesn't change people," he said. "It just reveals them." That line stayed with her long after he left that night. Days turned into a week, and something unexpected began to happen. Emily wasn't just continuing the test anymore. She was starting to care. One evening, as the sky darkened and the air grew colder, Daniel sat beside her as usual. But this time, he looked more serious. "You can't stay out here forever," he said. Emily's heart skipped. "I'm fine," she replied quickly. "No, you're not," he said gently but firmly. "And you shouldn't have to be." She looked away. This was dangerous territory. "I don't have much," Daniel continued, "but I have a place. It's small, nothing special, but it's warm." Emily froze. "I'm not saying you have to," he added quickly. "I just don't like the idea of you being out here like this." Her mind raced. This was exactly the kind of moment her father had warned her about. Trust, risk, reality. If she said yes, everything would change. If she said no, she might lose the one person who had shown her real kindness. "Why would you do that for me?" she asked quietly. Daniel didn't hesitate. "Because you gave everything you had to survive," he said. "The least I can do is give you a chance to rest." Her breath caught. She gave everything, and he saw it. Not just the surface, but the struggle behind it. But a question rose in her mind, stronger than ever. Was Daniel truly just a kind man shaped by hardship? Or was there something deeper about him that she still didn't know? Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment where you are watching from. It gives me the strength and encouragement to keep writing beautiful stories. Emily didn't answer him immediately. The offer stayed in the air between them, heavy with meaning. For weeks, she had been pretending to be someone who had nothing. Watching, waiting, testing the world. And now, the one person who had consistently shown her kindness was asking her to trust him. Just for one night, Daniel added softly, as if he could sense her hesitation. You don't have to stay. You don't even have to talk. I just don't want you freezing out here. Emily looked at him carefully. There was no pressure in his eyes. No expectation. No hidden agenda she could detect. Just quiet concern. Her father's voice echoed faintly in her memory. People reveal themselves when there's nothing to gain. Emily swallowed slowly. Okay, she said at last, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel didn't react dramatically. He didn't smile widely or act proud of himself. He simply nodded once, as if this was the most normal thing in the world. Come on, he said gently, standing up and offering his hand. She hesitated for a second before taking it. His hand was warm. That small detail struck her more deeply than she expected. They walked in silence for a few minutes, the city lights reflecting off wet pavement, the evening air colder than before. Emily became more aware of everything. The sound of their footsteps, the way Daniel slowed slightly to match her pace, the quiet steadiness in his presence. You don't have to tell me anything you're not comfortable with, he said after a while. Emily looked at him. Why are you saying that? Because most people ask questions when they think someone owes them an explanation, he replied calmly. You don't owe me anything. Her chest tightened again. This wasn't how most people behaved. A few minutes later, they stopped in front of an old apartment building. It wasn't impressive. The paint on the walls was faded, the entrance light flickered slightly, and the stairs inside were narrow and quiet. Daniel opened the door and stepped aside so she could enter first. It's not much, he said as they walked upstairs. But it's safe. Emily nodded silently. When they reached his apartment, he unlocked the door and turned on the light. The room was small, simple, and clean. A couch, a small table, a bookshelf, and a tiny kitchen in the corner. Nothing luxurious, but everything felt real. You can sit, he said, placing his bag down. I'll make something warm for you. Emily sat slowly on the couch, her eyes scanning the room. There were no expensive decorations, no signs of wealth, but there was something she hadn't expected, a feeling of peace. Her father's mansion had always felt impressive but cold. This small apartment felt human. Daniel returned a few minutes later with a bowl of warm soup and a glass of water. It's simple, he said, placing it in front of her. But it should help. Emily stared at it for a moment before picking up the spoon. The warmth spread through her slowly, not just physically, but emotionally. She hadn't realized how much she needed this until now. Thank you, she said quietly. Daniel sat on the chair across from her, giving her space instead of watching her closely. You don't have to thank me every time, he said with a small smile. I know, she replied. I just don't hear kindness very often. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked down for a second, as if remembering something. Neither do I, he said softly. That simple sentence carried more weight than she expected. Do you live alone? Emily asked carefully. Yeah, he nodded. It's easier that way. There was a pause. Then he added, People leave when things get hard. I guess I just got used to not depending on anyone. Emily's grip on the spoon tightened slightly. That sounded painfully familiar. You sound like you stopped trusting people, she said. Daniel shrugged lightly. Not completely. Just carefully. Emily leaned back slightly, her thoughts racing. This wasn't part of the plan anymore. She had started this to test the world, to prove something to her father, to find someone who could show kindness when there was nothing to gain. But now, sitting in Daniel's small apartment, eating food he had prepared without expecting anything in return. She felt something she hadn't prepared for. Connection. Real, quiet connection. "Daniel," she said softly. He looked up. "What made you stop today?" she asked. "The first time you saw me. What made you stop when everyone else kept walking?" He thought about it for a moment. "You looked like someone who had given up trying to ask for help," he said. "And I know what that feels like." Her breath caught slightly. He didn't see her as weak. He saw her as someone who had tried too long. That changed everything. The room grew quiet again, but this time it felt heavier, more emotional. Emily looked around once more, noticing something she hadn't seen before. A framed photo on the shelf. It was Daniel, but he looked different in it. More confident, more polished, standing beside what looked like a large office building. "Is that you?" she asked. Daniel followed her gaze and nodded slowly. "That was a long time ago," he said. "What happened?" she asked. He hesitated. Then he gave a small, tired smile. "Trusting the wrong people," he said quietly. "I gave everything I had to someone who needed help. I thought I was doing the right thing. But when things went bad, I lost more than I expected." Emily's heart pounded. He gave everything, and now he was giving again. But why? Was it strength or something deeper? She looked at him, her emotions more complicated than ever, because now the question wasn't just about him anymore. It was about her. If Daniel ever found out that she wasn't really a helpless girl on the street, that she had money, security, and a life completely different from what he believed, would he still look at her the same way? Or would the man who gave everything to a stranger walk away the moment he realized the truth? Emily didn't sleep that night. The quiet of Daniel's apartment, which had felt so warm just hours before, now pressed heavily against her thoughts. She lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything: his kindness, his honesty, the way he gave without hesitation, and the truth she was hiding. She had started this journey believing she was in control, that she could step into the role of a girl who gave everything to a stranger, observe from a distance, and walk away when she found her answer. But now, she wasn't in control anymore. Her heart was involved. By morning, her decision was made. She couldn't keep pretending. If Daniel was truly the man who gave more than he took, then he deserved the truth, even if it meant losing him. When Daniel stepped out briefly to pick up something for breakfast, Emily stood in the center of the small apartment, her hands trembling slightly. "This has to end," she whispered to herself. Minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Emily froze. That wasn't Daniel. Slowly, she walked toward the door and opened it. Two men in dark suits stood outside. Behind them, a sleek black car waited by the curb. Her breath caught. "Miss Parker," one of them said respectfully, "your father has been looking for you." The world she had stepped away from had found her again. Emily glanced back into the apartment. Everything she had found here, everything that had felt real, suddenly felt fragile. "I'll come," she said quietly. And just like that, she left. When Daniel returned, the apartment felt different the moment he stepped inside. Too quiet. "Lily?" he called out. No answer. He walked further in, his eyes scanning the room. The couch was empty. The space where she had been was gone. Something in his chest tightened. He didn't understand why. She was just a stranger. Someone he had helped. Someone who was never supposed to stay. But the silence said otherwise. She probably found somewhere better. he muttered to himself. She'll be okay. But the words didn't sit right, because deep down, he knew something had changed. 2 days later, as Daniel worked at the repair shop, a black car pulled up outside. It didn't belong there. People noticed. He noticed. One of the suited men stepped out and approached him. "Daniel Brooks?" he asked. Daniel frowned slightly. "Yeah." "You've been requested," the man said calmly. "By who?" But something in his gut already knew. The gates were massive, the kind of place Daniel had only ever seen from a distance. The car drove slowly through the entrance, revealing a world that didn't match his own. Luxury, power, silence. When the car stopped, Daniel stepped out, his eyes adjusting to the scale of everything. And then he saw her. Emily, standing at the top of the steps, not Lily, not the girl from the street, but someone else entirely, elegant, composed, untouchable. Daniel's breath caught. For a moment, he didn't recognize her, and then it hit him. "You," he said, his voice low, filled with disbelief. Emily stepped forward slowly. "I wanted to tell you," she said, her voice soft but unsteady. "I just didn't know how." Daniel let out a short, disbelieving breath. "Tell me what?" he asked. "That everything was a lie?" The words cut deeper than he intended. Emily shook her head quickly. "Not everything," she said. "My name is Emily Parker. I'm not who you thought I was, but what I felt." "You let me believe you were someone else," Daniel interrupted, his voice tightening. "You let me think you had nothing." "I had to," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "I needed to know if someone could care without expecting anything in return. I needed to find someone who would give more than they take." Daniel stared at her. "And I was your test?" he asked. "No," she said firmly, stepping closer. "You were the only one who passed without even trying." Silence filled the space between them. "And now what?" Daniel asked. "I'm supposed to just accept this?" Emily's eyes filled with emotion. "I'm asking you to see me," she said, "the same way you did before, not for what I have, but for who I am." At that moment, a tall man stepped forward from the background. Her father, a calm, observant, powerful. "She gave everything to find someone worthy," he said, his voice steady. "And you gave without knowing what you would receive." Daniel didn't look at him. His focus stayed on Emily. "This isn't about money," Daniel said finally. "It never was." "I know," Emily whispered. "That's why this matters," he continued. "Because what you did, it changes things." Emily nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I know," she said again. "And if you walk away, I'll understand." The silence that followed felt endless, heavy, final. Daniel took a slow breath. Then he stepped forward, not toward the mansion, not toward her father, but toward her. "I don't care about any of this," he said, gesturing slightly to the world around them. "I never did." Emily's heart pounded. "I cared about you," he added. "The girl who gave everything, even when she had nothing left." Her breath caught. "That's the person I saw," he continued, "and that's the person I'm choosing." A tear rolled down her cheek. Relief, emotion, truth. "But no more lies," Daniel said firmly. "No more pretending." Emily nodded immediately. "No more," she promised. And in that moment, something deeper than wealth, power, or status was built between them. Because in the end, the girl who gave everything to a stranger found the one man who gave her more than she ever expected. Not money, not power, but something far more rare, a heart that chose her, even after knowing the truth. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment where you are watching from. It gives me the strength and encouragement to keep writing beautiful stories. Thank you.